my lane fast, call it high speed. I've been working hard, yeah, I've been working nightly. If you think you'll win, not likely. I be taking shots, yeah, cold-blooded, icy. Watching numbers grow is what I call sightseeing. In the front row, run it up when they hype me. The following grows, they know how to ignite me. Call me CEO, I've been running right, see. And I ain't playing games, I create my own lane, making pleasure out of pain, turning losses into.
What is up, Steeler Nation? It's your boy Daniel J. Welcome to this Saturday edition of State of the Steelers and the preview show, where we're talking about the upcoming matchup between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Indianapolis Colts. This is going to be a tight game, in my opinion, guys. I know that offensively, the Colts aren't the best team in the NFL right now. I know they have some question marks at their head coach position, but defensively, this team has stopped some pretty powerful offenses, and I don't anticipate that the Steelers are going to go in to Indianapolis and just blow the Indianapolis Colts defense away. I think this is going to be a tight matchup. I think that the Steelers can win this game. In fact, I'm predicting them to do so. We'll be going over, the keys to victory, later on in the show and predictions. But I'll say that I do think this is a very winnable game, to get the Steelers out of, 3-7. I mean, right now, guys, this is just a little bit of truth and reality. The Pittsburgh Steelers they have the worst record outside of the Houston Texans. There's only one team that has a worse record than the Pittsburgh Steelers, and this is some unfamiliar territory for myself and for most of the black and gold faithful. There's a lot of question marks with this team, whether, and it's from the top to the bottom, from, the organization as far as the decisions that they've made to this point, especially in the draft and free agency, not addressing certain positions like a left tackle, like a center, like a left guard, and kind of skipping away from that position or those positions. I mean, you look at the defensive line as well. I think they addressed it with Leal this year. However, you have Leal, you have Loudermilk last year that the Steelers traded up, in the fourth round to get. And, they really haven't addressed those, the front seven in the top of the draft. And so, there's question marks across the board. This was or is a rebuilding season. I don't anticipate the Steelers are going to make that much of a run. I think that they can. I hate to say they need to stack some wins and they can win, but they need to stack quarters first. They have or halves. They haven't played a full game yet, and that's been my biggest concern when it comes to the Pittsburgh Steelers up to this point. And you look at. And that's across the board. I mean, that's not just the offense. The defense has struggled at points. They've looked great at points. Now, when it comes to the defense, I don't hold as much criticism as Mike Tomlin does towards the defense, just because of the fact that I understand that the offense is so new and so young and are still going through their growing pains. I mean, you look at the offensive coordinator in Matt Canada and what he's been able to do this year with, and account with, what he did last year. It's not been impressive. You look at the quarterback position, it's been switched. It was Mr. Trubisky. It's not Kenny Pickett. I think that should have been done week one. We should have been able to have seen what Kenny Pickett has. I think that would have given this offense a better chance to grow. When you start one QB and then mix it up for a rookie 5 games into the season, that doesn't advance your offense. If anything, that kind of cuts it back down again. And so, with that being said, not starting Kenny Pickett early off, I think that was a huge mistake. I mean, there's a bunch of woulda, coulda, shouldas, but those are the ones that I think that are the biggest. If Kenny Pickett was a starting quarterback from week one, this offense could have progressed a little bit quicker. I have seen some progression. You look at the Saints game off the bye. You look at this last game against against the Bengals, where, offensively, they looked like they were starting to make some steps. They just couldn't finish the game. They couldn't put it all together in the second half. I don't I'm not one that subscribes to, the other team's noise that they make after the game, especially when it comes to a divisional team or opponent. The linebacker Pratt stated that he knew what the Pittsburgh Steelers offense was going to do, which is fine. I mean, it's an AFC North game. You know, it's a game in which both sides of the football know each other very well. Um, you're not going to trick the opponent very often. And if you do, it's usually on trick plays like a flea flicker that the Steelers attempted to do. And it was just poor execution, in my opinion. But you're not going to trick an AFC or a division opponent. Those games are typically to the wire, to the end, hard nosed, regardless of the schedule, regardless of the record, regardless of the placement in the division or in the AFC. Those games are typically close. Those games are usually won at the last couple of minutes of the game, and those games are usually won by the team that makes the least mistakes. Now, when it comes to this game, and you can also look at the first game against the Cincinnati Bengals, I can say that, in my opinion, that those games were closer, or especially the first one, were because the Steelers didn't put them away. I think the first game the Steelers could have easily handled the Bengals, especially having 5 turnovers. In this last game, the Steelers won the turnover battle again, but it was just they couldn't get off or stay on the field in the second half, and the defense couldn't get off. The Cincinnati Bengals had they were targeting Arthur Mollett quite a bit. And when you look at this team and you look at the team as far as the cornerbacks go, I think there's some huge question marks there. George Pickens came out earlier this week and said that he felt that practices in Georgia were tougher because the talent on defense was so great. Najee Harris said something similar last year about the practice when it came to Alabama. Maybe perhaps this team is a little bit too relaxed or too soft in practice. I mean, I've heard this for 2 seasons now, where we need to get better in practice. We need to practice harder. Like, that has been a constant, that's probably been the most constant thing that I've heard about the Pittsburgh Steelers in the last couple of years, is the fact that they feel, the players, is that they're not practicing enough or strong enough or studying hard enough or whatever the case may be. That falls down on leadership again, and I'm not a guy to call for anybody's, job mid-season or in the middle of the season. But I do think that the coaching staff seats need to be quite warm this offseason, especially if the Steelers don't turn around. You look at the competition that's left on the schedule. This team should win more games than they lose going out. Now, that doesn't mean that the Steelers should have a winning record. I'm not saying they're going to run the table. Would I love that? Hell yeah. I'd be jumping for joy, man. I kind of did break a lamp when Najee scored that long touchdown to tie the game there 10-10. I'll break it down, everybody. It was funny. I always watch the game with a football in my hand, right? And the way my house is laid out, there's my television, and then directly across it is my sofa, and to my left is a love seat with a lamp right next to it. Now, I see Najee break it. He scores a touchdown. I jump up, I grab the ball, and I spike it on the love seat. Now, that's not the ball bouncing or whatever. It didn't do anything. What ended up happening was I end up getting up and, make my arms go up in the touchdown, raise them as a touchdown symbol. And my hand goes through the shade of the lamp, right? And I lift the lamp up with me, and I almost drop it. It almost fell. The shade on the lamp is now crooked. Steelers fan says she was yelling at me. She sure was. She's like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "We scored a touchdown." I think this is the longest run we've had that went for a touchdown. And so I was super pumped. I was excited. I was pumped up for this game. And it's just deflating when you feel like, all right, maybe this team has turned a corner. Maybe this team is starting to do something good, and they just go completely backwards. In fact, after this, I highly recommend going and checking out wherever you find podcasts at. behind the steel curtain. I do a Saturday only audio podcast that I need to broadcast out there, by the way, called, and I titled that show, one step forward, two steps backwards. And that's kind of what I feel like this season has been with this team. It's like, all right, we've acquired the pieces, but we can't put it together. You get a win, and then it's followed by some poor performances. You get a win in the second half where you look like you turned it around. You go in the next game, you look like you got it, and then in the second half, you look like you started all over again. Constant 3-and-outs. This game against the Indianapolis Colts, and we're finally getting into it, it's not going to be an easy game. Offensively, the Colts aren't the toughest team in the book. You have Matt Ryan there, who's basically a statue. He's not going to be a guy that's going to threaten the run whatsoever. And so you have, that aspect of the game is not something that the Pittsburgh Steelers need to, worry about or cover at that point. And then you have, they have Jonathan Taylor, who's a good running back, who's a little bit of a slump this year as well. I wouldn't say it's, big as far as like, being a bust or anything like that. I just, compared to last year, it's down a little bit, but a lot of that has to do with the offensive line. They've not been able to get their offensive line settled. They really don't have an offensive line. If you thought that the Pittsburgh Steelers offensive line was bad, yeah, you're going to think that the Steelers defensive line is Hall of Fame worthy come Monday night, in my opinion. And so, they're struggling quite a bit when it comes to their offensive line. And that's going to be the key to this game. I think the Steelers are going to need to apply some pressure, and the defensive backs are going to have to make some turnovers. Now, like I mentioned before, George Pickens kind of maybe took a little slight shot at the cornerbacks. Arthur Maulet definitely got filleted last week against the Cincinnati Bengals. There's a big concern there. You have Will Jackson, the guy that the Steelers traded for. He's not going to be a part of the team probably until the end of the season. You're looking at Ahkello Witherspoon, who's still out with a hamstring. I have no idea why he wasn't ever placed on injured reserve. So you're left with Levi Wallace, who's not the fastest guy in the world. One of the main reasons why he wasn't drafted coming out of Alabama and why he was also a walk-on in Alabama was because he wasn't the fastest guy. His speed is not there. You have Cam Sutton, who's also speed challenged. He's not the fastest guy in the world either. I think that when you look at the remaining cornerbacks that are healthy, James Pierre is probably the one that gives you that speed aspect of being able to run with some of these speedier wide receivers. Ahkello Witherspoon was supposed to give you that. He was that speedier guy. He was that fast dude that, can keep up with these speed guys, but he's been just dealing with this horrible hamstring injury since earlier this season. Now, I had a hamstring injury myself. I've had several, but the first one that I had was the most horrible. I believe I tore it. And I can tell you that, I'm not a professional athlete, nor was I then, but it took me like 6 months to recover from that. And because I continued to run on it and not allow it to heal up, I popped it probably 6 times. And since then, probably it's probably about 6-7 times since I initially had it, where I've popped my hamstring since then. So it's one of those things where it's real tricky. Like, if you don't heal it up correctly, it's going to be a continual thing for the rest of your career life. And so, I think the medical staff there in Pittsburgh are fantastic. And so I don't have any doubts that they're going to be able to get him going. It's just unfortunate that he's been out for the most of this season. Let's look at, if you have any questions, y'all, hit me up in the live chat. I'll answer them. Let's look at the injury report real quick. For the Colts, defensive tackle DeForest Buckner hasn't participated. He's been dealing with ribs and an illness this week. I think he's probably going to play. Their tight end, Kalen Granson, he's also not participated. He's been dealing with an illness. I think if he gets better, he's probably going to play. Their center, Ryan Kelly, has been dealing with a shoulder and a knee. He's been limited. Another one that's not been participating due to an ankle injury is Woody Pay. Now that guy, defensive end, that's the one thing that I've noticed about this defense, watching their game against the Eagles, is they do a fantastic job about containment and sealing up the edges around. And when they attack quarterback, the quarterback needs to run up into the pocket in order to make to extend the play or potentially run. If quarterback tries to run back end or out, these defensive ends are fantastic. They're going to get Kenny Pickett if he continues to do that. And that's one of the things that kind of concerns me, because Kenny Pickett, in the first half of that game last week, he was moving up into the pocket. He was moving up into the side, and he found some receivers down the field. But there's been certain points in his game where he panics a little bit and runs backwards. If he does that in this game, that's going to spell some trouble. So he needs to run forward in this game. I don't anticipate him going to be able to run outside of these defensive ends too much, because these guys did a fantastic job against Jalen Hurts and containment. But if the Steelers can do that, run up the middle with the quarterback and he can hold the ball for a little bit and make, allow these receivers to make something happen out in the back, down the field, I think the Steelers can do something against this team. Let's see who else is injured on their team. Defensive tackle Grover Stewart. He's been he did not participate yesterday. Let's see the full participants. Those are, I'm not need to worry about those guys. And so let's go to the Steelers. Right now, you got Miles Boykin, who is he is a limited participant last week with an oblique. I think there's a good chance he's going to come back. I think Mike Tomlin kind of alluded to that, depending on his efforts in practice. They're going to be their guide, as he always says. Mason Cole was a limited participant yesterday. I think he's going to play. And he's a huge piece, guys. He didn't come back in that second half, and I'm not saying that if Mason Cole was in that second half that the Steelers continue the same trajectory or the momentum that they had in the first half, but I don't think they're getting the 3 and outs. And I think the running game is looking a lot better, especially in that second half with Mason Cole there versus JC Hassenauer. So with Cameron Hayward, he was just rest. So was Larry. He's been full. Jaylen Warren, he is a guy I don't think is going to be playing in this game. I know that Mike Tomlin left the light on for him, especially since this game's a Monday night game. But if he doesn't participate or practice today, him being a rookie, just based on that and only having 1 day of practice, I don't feel that Mike Tomlin's going to put him in. I think Mike Tomlin's been pretty routine about his about how he plays players and who he plays on limited practices and things of that nature. And a rookie player has never been a player that if they miss majority of the practice that you would see them in, unless they were one of these, first round pick Najee Harris types. And, Jaylen Warren is an undrafted rookie. He's got a lot to prove. And I don't think that they're going to allow him to prove his availability off of no practice right now, when you have some other options right there. I think we're going to see McFarland being promoted from the practice squad, and he's going to be given an opportunity to play. I've been looking for it. I think that McFarland brings us another dynamic to the game. He has a speed that Jaylen Warren and Najee Harris don't have. So he's also, he has some hands coming out of the backfield. Jaylen Warren does as well. And so I'm not saying that that's going to be an added plus that the Steelers haven't had, but it's something that the Steelers can lean on. My concerns is going to be his size and his pass protection. Is he going to be able to get in there when a safety's coming in, or if there's a some type of loop or the defensive end have some type of trick play where there's coming around and they have a free shot coming up the middle. Is McFarland going to be big enough and strong enough to get in their way? TJ Watt, he had just normal rest. He's going to be getting better every week, in my opinion. Every week that he plays and participates, I think he's going to get better and more in game shape. I think you saw a lot of Jameer Jones last week. You saw a lot of Malik Reed out there. And, a lot of that also had to do with the fact that the offense was 3 and out so often. And so with that being said, with this team, I think that the Steelers are I don't think the Colts are going to drive up and down the field the way the Cincinnati Bengals did. And so I see TJ Watt playing a higher percentage of this game. Maybe not more snaps, but a higher percentage because I don't see them out on the field as much. Akila Weatherspoon is still out. Connor Hayward didn't participate yesterday, but it was due to an illness. I think he'll be fine. James Daniels came up yesterday on the injury report. This is the interior offensive lineman. He was limited with a growing injury, so that's something that we definitely have to keep an eye out, especially with this front of the Indianapolis Colts. Robert Spillane also showed up yesterday with a back injury, was limited. I think those two guys end up playing. Let's see. I got a question on the live chat. I hear the Colts have a stout run defense. Do you think the Steelers will be able to run the ball at all? I think that if Mason Cole stays in the game, Mason Cole and James Daniels finish the game, I think the Steelers will be fine in the running game. It is a concern. It is a concern, but I have seen some progression in the Steelers' offensive running game plan for the last couple of weeks leading back to the Saints game, where they ran for over 200 yards. And this last game as well, I think that they ran well until Mason Cole was out. When Mason Cole was out, it didn't seem the same. It definitely didn't. It didn't seem the same. And so I think that's important. James Daniels with a groin injury, that's kind of concerning. These guys are going to have to push people out of the way. It's not just by getting in the way and blocking and holding your spot there. They have to move people, when it comes to the run game. And so these leg injuries aren't keen for what they have to do. But I hope that the Steelers run the game. I have my biggest criticism when it comes to this offense and this offensive game plan is that they don't stick to the run enough. I think that the Saints game was an outlier because of the fact that Kenny Pickett rolled his ankle. I feel that if Kenny Pickett didn't roll his ankle, Matt Canada is throwing another 15 times in that game, unnecessarily throwing in that game 15 times. And that's the one thing that I'm looking forward to if the Pittsburgh Steelers can. Matt Canada this year is that we get somebody who understands what's working and sticks to what's working. Because I think that's been one of the biggest Achilles heels of the Pittsburgh Steelers is they do some weird stuff. I mean, this goes back to like even all right. So this year there's been times where the Steelers are moving the ball and they take the quarterback out of the play and put him in Wildcat. I saw this even last year when no, it wasn't last year, but the thing is, at the end of the day, they do some weird stuff where they kill their own momentum. Is basically what I'm trying to say. Untimely plays, things of that nature, and even to a certain extent, the flea flicker. Like I understand, excuse me, I'm not upset that the Steelers called the flea flicker. That is an aggressive play. That is a play that if it works, if Najee pitches the ball back to Kenny Pickett appropriately, there's a possibility for George Pickens down the sideline. And so I'm not against that play, but that play in that moment did kind of, because it didn't work, because it wasn't like a high percentage pass play that was going to get yards, because it didn't work, it just was like, what are you doing? So give me 1 second, guys. And so those are the things that, in my opinion, the Steelers need to get better, is just to not kill your own momentum, not put yourself in these weird positions. But yeah, let's see. Yeah, if you have any questions, guys, let me know in the live chat. We'll be probably doing this for another 5 minutes. 5 minutes. So, but yeah, I'm looking forward to this game. I think the Steelers can, get a win. Right now they're 3-7. If they win, they go up to 4-7. The remaining portion of the schedule isn't as difficult as what the Steelers have played. I think the hardest teams that the Steelers are going to play here going forward is probably going to be the 2 matchups against the Ravens. The Steelers defense has had Lamar Jackson's number to a certain extent. They've been able to minimize him. He hasn't done what he's done to other teams against the Steelers. And the Steelers really have put themselves in position to win against the Ravens. Well, I think they've won the last like 3 or 4 games. So um, I'm not saying that those are gimme games, especially with the way that in which this offense is performing, but those are games that are winnable for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Let's see. I don't know if I'm the only one who noticed, but nothing Matt Canada calls works. I mean, I'm not going to disagree with you. The offense is struggling. The offense is definitely struggling. Matt Canada is. I don't blame Matt Canada 100% for the entire struggles of the offense. I don't think that if Matt Canada was to be fired today and you brought in an offensive coordinator tomorrow, that the problems are fixed. I think that the problems go above Matt Canada. You know, you look at how the draft has gone in the last 5 years. The first player for the Pittsburgh Steelers drafted, and I would say let's take Kenny Pickett out of it because we still don't know what he is. But you take the decision of Najee Harris, a running back in the first round, instead of addressing the offensive line. You look at some of the players that they've selected. It's concerning a little bit to an extent where you have your Artie Burns in there, and let me pull them all up from 2016 or something like that. I looked it up with the Unofficial Steelers podcast, and we brought it up and we talked about the first picks, and it was just like TJ Watt and a whole lot of question marks. And so, you look at that. You also look at the fact that the offense last year, there was money to be paid or used, and the Steelers did not address the left tackle, did not address the center position, a position that was clearly a concern. I mean, I think that if you have Ben Roethlisberger last year with this offensive line, which is not the best, but this offensive line last year, with Najee's ability last year and his running style, with a better offensive line, just slightly better, I think the Steelers, are a more competent team last year and potentially going a little bit further than what they're doing now. And so I think there's got to be some changes. And I think that the Steelers having 3 picks potentially in the top 40 is gonna make for some huge changes. Now, the one thing that we all probably aren't anticipating is there's also a move that might be made that the Steelers haven't done since Casey Hampton, and that's move back in the draft, right? Kevin Colbert, he wasn't the biggest component or proponent of moving back. He wanted to, make sure that the player that he wanted or that the Steelers wanted was there, that they acquired them. That was more important than acquiring more draft picks. But Omar Khan has done things a little bit differently up to this point. So I'm looking forward to him potentially doing something like that as well, where he's a little bit more aggressive when it comes to acquiring picks, when it comes to trading, things of that nature. And so I'm looking forward to this this draft. I mean, I don't want to look forward to it yet because we have so much football to play, and football's only, portion of the year. But when you look at how this team is going to draft, this is uncharted territory as well. So I look forward to. I want to see which positions get addressed. But as I mentioned before, I think that defense, as crazy as it sounds, as much money that's on the defense, I think defense is probably where you need to address some of the players. I mean, you're looking at a middle linebacker. Devin Bush probably won't be here. You're probably looking at, maybe Leal replaces Cam Hayward when he retires eventually, or fills that role. You're looking at a cornerback. In my opinion, middle linebacker, cornerback, offensive line are probably the biggest needs for this team. And I'm not sure which order the Steelers address them in, but I think those are going to be the 3: offensive line, corner, and middle linebacker. So we got a couple questions here. Steelers fan says, how do you feel Najee will do? I hope he continues in the trajectory that he's going. I want to see the man break triple digits in the, he came close against the Saints. He had 99 yards against Cincinnati. I think he had 90. So I want to see him hit 100. I'm not sure if this is the team that he's going to do it against, but I think he can. Especially if Mason Cole is going to be in the lineup. I think there's been a change in Najee's style of running. He's not doing that shake and bake stuff, trying to make people miss. Here recently, it's been more that down the hill type of running, downhill and getting after it. And in my opinion, I think that's just a better. It suits him better as a player. I mean, you look at his physical stat sheet. He's a bigger guy. He's a physical guy. He's a strong guy. He's a guy that you would anticipate or think that would be difficult to tackle, and he needs to use those attributes in his favor. And I think he's been doing that better. Um, it's going to be a good game. I think he's going to have an okay game, but I want to see him hit triple digits. Thank you for the question. Brian Brown goes, do you think the Steelers will go offensive line or DB in the draft or something else? So I definitely think they need to address the left side of the line. Dan Moore is not, he's had some flashes, but he's not, I don't think he's a guy. He hasn't been able to fix those issues this year. He gets bull rush. He's not played the best. And I don't think you should be putting your hope in a fourth rounder left tackle that was probably just supposed to be a depth piece. I don't think when the Steelers drafted him that they thought they had their guy for the next 10, 12 years. So I think that left tackle could potentially be high up on that draft board, depending on whether it is that they're drafting and how the draft goes. I anticipate this being a high or a heavy quarterback draft in the top 10. And so that's going to push down some potential players into the back end of the top 10. And, if the Steelers are in that position, they can end up getting somebody pretty game changing. And if you're in the top 10, I think you go best player available. And, if that best player is a middle linebacker or cornerback or even a receiver, I don't think Deontay Johnson's going to be here much past next year. The Steelers traded Chase Claypool away. So, do you follow in the footsteps of the Bengals and bring Addison in for the Steelers? Kenny Pickett's number one target when he was in college. Maybe. But I think that left tackle, middle linebacker, and cornerback are the key positions there. And I would think in the third round, they're probably going to go center or guard. It's because it's going to be a high third round pick. So I'm thinking they're going center or guard in that position. And that's where I would address. Now, things could change in free agency if the Steelers go out there and grab a left tackle, grab a middle linebacker. Like I think Tremaine Edmonds is going to be a free agent. I would love to see Tremaine Edmonds in the Steelers uniform. I think it would be fantastic to have him, Miles Jack, next to each other. We wouldn't need to address that anymore. And so free agency is going to be key, but I think if you're in the top 10, you go best player available. Thank you. And I'll have one more question before I let you guys go. And that question is, Steelers getting Boz back this year? It depends. He's on I think he has 2 more games left. I think that the Steelers drop 1 or 2 more of the games. I think they just shut him down for the rest of the year. Now if they win and some things go in the favor of the Pittsburgh Steelers as far as other teams in the NFL drop a couple of games, then perhaps, if the Steelers are in some form of hunt, they would, let's just say the Steelers win the next 2 games. They're 5-7. Maybe he comes back, but I don't want to push it too hard just because, that is his leg, it's like trying to push back a quarterback that has an elbow injury or something. You want to make sure that the main portion of the body that they utilize the most is okay. If it was his non-kicking leg, I'm saying, yeah, bring him in. But if it's his kicking leg and, it has something to do with his mechanics, then I don't think he'll be helping the Pittsburgh Steelers by being out there. Thank you very much. Let's see. One more. He says, good show. Got to catch more of these early shows. Good stuff. Thank you so much, Brian Brown. Thank you, everybody in the live chat. That's going to do it for me today. As far as the score prediction, I think that the Pittsburgh Steelers win this game I'm going 17-9. I think the Steelers don't put up as much points as we would anticipate or hope, but this is a very solid defense that they're going up against, and I don't think the Steelers are going to allow them to score a touchdown. So I'm going 17-9 in a game where the Steelers don't make all their points in one half. So I think they score 7 in the first, 10 in the second. That's how I'm going with this game. And if they do that, I'll tell you this: if the Steelers win 17-9 and they scored all 17 points in the first quarter and the first half and didn't do anything in the second half, or vice versa, I'm not going to be impressed with this team. I'm not. I want to see this team, be competitive, move the ball down the field. I understand they're playing a defense that's tough, and I'm not expecting them to score many, many points, but I do expect them to be competitive the whole game. I don't want to see a game where they're just flat on their feet. At this point, the outcome of the game isn't as important as how the game is played. I'll leave you guys with that. I appreciate you guys. We'll see you guys on Monday. I'll be doing 2 shows Monday, I believe. I'll probably do another preview show, just kind of talk about any surprises that may have came up before the game, and then we'll definitely do a post-game show. But with that being said, guys, I'm Daniel J. This is State of the Steelers, and peace.